Hello, my name is Tim Vasius. I'm one of the instructors at Missouri Valley Line Apprenticeship. I always tell people I identify as a journeyman lineman, but in the industry I've worked as a substation technician. I actually started in the trade as an inside wireman. I've been trained as a network mechanic, underground transmission splicer, obviously overhead underground distribution, transmission, pretty much all points in between. So my specialty here is just to instruct really anything electric, so I try to help where I can. Our organization, Missouri Valley Line Constructors, is one of the area joint apprenticeship training committees. So in the United States, actually across North America, you've got the IBEW and you've got NECA, National Electrical Contractor Association. So between those two entities, the IBEW and NECA, they equal parts formed a third entity, which was formerly known as the National Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, which has really now been rebranded as the Electrical Training Alliance. So from that national program that established really a curriculum for outside line as well as inside wiremen, the United States for outside line was divided up into various areas. So Missouri Valley JATC is one of those 9 areas. So the area we cover in the upper Midwest area is basically North Dakota, South Dakota, as well as Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Missouri. So that's our 7-state region. So essentially all of the IBEW work, which is manned and accomplished through NECA contractors in those 7 states, ours is the training element. We train all of the apprentices for that outside line work, electrical work, and as well as we provide continuing education and professional development for all of our signatory contractors. So if there's any update, upgrade, refresher training needed for the line series, we also provide that. So step 1 is always application. So it's kind of unique in history of time. I can go back to my vintage many years ago. You had to wait for an opportunity to come up to become an apprentice in just about anything. But we're in a period now in construction where we're begging people to consider coming in. We have constant openings. So as an example, pretty much every other week we're putting on a class of about 30 apprentices. So the process begins for them when they go online and they apply online with Missouri Valley Line Constructors. That online process proves pretty easy for most of them. They can put their information in. They have to be at least 18 years of age. They have to have a commercial driver's license. Now sometimes the CDL hurts some of the younger drivers because they can't really cross straight lines. But if we have an arrangement with a contractor that's willing to keep them in a state until they're 21, that works pretty well. So once they apply online and they meet the minimum requirements that we have, we will look at all that and we will develop a list, and then we will invite people, applicants, to come down here to Missouri Valley, and they will basically work through a series of assessments. So there's a lot of academic assessments such as math, English reading, comprehension, and that's all online, and that's a national-based program. It's proctored, so if you can imagine 30, 40, 50 people in a room, they have to go through this battery of tests, and if they pass all of those tests, then the next step in the process is actually to go for an oral interview. So we have our committee members of the IBEW and NECA for those 7 states will all converge. Several of them will come down for a day or two, several days, and they will meet with each applicant one-on-one and learn about them. Try to explain to them what's expected of them as an apprentice. Try to learn if they have any idea what they're getting into, where their personality is. So we've assessed their academics. We believe we have the aptitude to learn the things necessary really to learn the industry concepts. And then they're looking at personality, they're looking at background, they're saying, are you going to fit in? Do you have the right attitude? So we look at aptitude, we look at attitude. And if those things come together, we rate them on a scale, basically, and we actually give a certain amount of preference treatment for folks that maybe have accomplished pre-apprentice programs as well as military. We're actively involved with bringing military folks out of the military right into the field, so they get a placement right in as long as they meet all the criteria. And then once we have that list established, we rely on our contractors to call us and say, hey, we have more work in this area, that area, I need more apprentices. So we evaluate, look at the number of apprentices we have, we look at who's on the list, and we schedule an orientation class. So we do that 30 at a time. So we will go to that list of applicants that have completed the aptitude testing, and we say, hey, Monday morning, you're going to be in the next orientation class. So what we do is we provide them a hotel. They'll usually roll in Sunday night. They will come in Monday morning. First thing in the morning is basically what we call our boot camp. So they're indentured at this point, but the first task they have to do is to complete all these physical assessments. So it's a little bit taxing on them physically, especially if it's really hot or really cold out, but we put them through a series of tasks that simulate the type of manual labor that our contractors may expect of them on day one. So whether it's shoveling gravel, digging a hole, operating hand-operated drilling devices, you name it, it's challenging, it's tough, it's hard, but it's really more of an emotional assessment. Will they stick with it? It's nothing that's impossible, but we get them through these challenges. And what it proves to us is when we send these apprentices out to work, they can do anything that the contractors expect of them. If they can't meet these minimum requirements, they're allowed to reapply for the program in 6 months. And we have many applicants that will fail, and oftentimes they'll thank us. They'll be like, wow, we had no idea it was going to be so tough. Thank you for letting us see that. And then they will go hit the gym, work on strength, work on whatever they need to, and then come back 6 months later, and they're the most motivated and determined, and they'll get through it. So once our applicants make it through that first we call it boot camp section. Obviously we have drug testing, we have random testing, so we test everybody right off the bat, and then immediately we start them in an ET&D OSHA 10 class, so it's all on safety. Once we get them in the door, we know they're going to stay. They've accomplished that first part. We put them in the 10-hour of construction safety training, and that's pretty much the afternoon of day one. They're pretty wore out and tired by then, so they don't mind being in the class. And then we will finish that up, and then once we get the initial construction training done where they understand all the aspects of the ET&D 10-hour, then we will issue tools if they don't have them themselves. So what we have going out there right now is the first round of them learning to climb a pole using wood pole fall restraint. So we require 100% fall protection. Many of our apprentices have learned in a pre-apprentice program, or maybe they've entered from a utility or wherever they've come from. So we'll divide them up between people that have climbing experience and people that have none, and then we'll put our instructors out in our pole climbing field, and we will work with them appropriately at each level. And then there's certain practical assessments that they have to complete by the time they leave here at the end of the week, namely pole top rescue, bucket truck rescue. So we take many people from never having put hooks on before by the end of our week, and they're here all day, and we'll keep them late if we have to. By the end of the week, they have to qualify with pole top rescue.
Well, you know what Jeff and I try to do is kind of lay a foundation about, simple things. They're going to learn a lot more about the theory behind it, about why you do certain things. But we're just trying to lay that out that, this line of work is not about taking chances. They don't pay you to get hurt. You should be able to retire in pretty much the same condition that you started with, maybe a little older, a little grayer, that happens, but it's not about taking chances. So the basic safety about climbing, to verify your connections, and it's not about speed. This is not about speed. We definitely don't promote that. It's about doing it efficient, because experience builds speed. When you start trying to rush, then you get ahead of your thinking capacity and you make mistakes.
And the whole time they're doing all the learning to climb, we have classes in between. And then when they leave here after their first week of apprenticeship, we will assign them an LMS, which is a learning management system, online. We give them essentially a box of books that they get for their first year, and they have a plan for learning. They self-pace, they self-guide through the online learning through a combination of reading, studying, doing the work online, answering quizzes, and then they have access to their instructors at any time. They can call with questions that they have, but we've helped develop a lot of this curriculum where they can really guide themselves through it. And then 6 months later, they will come back to class for another week. And in that session of weeks, what we do is we will assess them, essentially test them on everything they were supposed to have accomplished. We look at their grades online. We can track all of that information. We test to make sure that they're achieving the minimum standard. And then throughout class that week, it's the same type of a rotation where we have lectures, we have classroom. We will focus on very specific academic criteria that they need to understand. And early on, one of the things we're looking at are obviously fall protection as well as grounding. Some of the improper grounding that's going on is one of the causes for injury in our industry. So we make sure right from the get-go our apprentices have a very solid academic understanding of electrical theory, starting with DC theory, and then we move into magnetism, transformers, AC theory. It's very tough, it's challenging, and a lot of people don't really realize what they're getting into when they start getting into that lesson plan and then that kind of learning. So we teach everything hands-on. So everything we tell them in theory, we will find a way to let them get their hands on it in a safe manner and try it and do it so that it understands. A lot of these folks are a little more than a kinesthetic learner. It's their whole body they need to incorporate with learning. So that's how everything is designed. It's a combination of academics, and it's a combination of getting the whole body trained into these motions that we need them to do. So once we're done in the classroom, we will head out to our various labs. If it's inclement weather, we have many indoor labs, but really the most precious time we spend is outside in our 50-acre pole field, where we get either on the underground equipment, the vaults, the submersible, or in the air, whether it's off the pole or out of a bucket truck, and we're actually performing these tasks.
A lot of the stuff we do, like transformer changeouts, capacitor changeouts, we basically build a real-life scenario with a capacitor bank online. It's hooked up just like you're going to see it in the field. The apprentices get to go up. They have to come up with a step-by-step procedure to de-energize the capacitor bank. They have to cover all the conductors up, wait 5 minutes, open the cutouts with a load break tool, and they get to treat it just like it's a live scenario out in the field. Some of the other stuff we're doing out here, transformer changeouts. They got to hang a transformer gin on the pole. They got to do a job hazard awareness tailboard briefing before they actually do the task. They lay everything out, then they actually go up, hang the transformer gin, rig everything up, change that transformer out. They have to walk the instructor through how to de-energize that transformer safely, how to protect themselves, get the transformer to the ground, and then they have to basically reverse that scenario and put the transformer back on the pole and energize everything safely.
So we have set aside certain tasks that, based on the level where the apprentices are, before they leave at the end of the week, they have to successfully complete certain level of academics as well as all these performance assessment tasks. And again, when they come every 6 months, that's how they increase the step. So when they leave here after their week long, they go back to their contractors at the next level. So they've had that last 6 months of experience, all of that self-paced learning. They've come here, we've tied up all the loose ends, we've prepared them for what's next. We reassign new work that they do over the next 6 months, and then we see them again every 6 months. So every apprentice comes into a program, there's 7 steps. So they start at the first step, 6 months later they're at the second step. So along each step of the journey, there's a minimum number of hours that they have to achieve, as well as the academics. And then the other criteria we have for our apprentices to challenge the journeyman exam is they have to complete all of the academics, they have to complete all of the cold work, which is roughly 7,000 hours. Then there's an additional 8 hours of what we call hot time that they have to complete. Now our hot time is a little different than other apprenticeships' hot time in that our line apprentices can only count hot time when they're actually in their gloves and sleeves, or they're hot sticking live conductor. Grounding work, for an example, is energized work. We do it with live line tools. We teach and train that, but they don't count that time toward their hot time. It's really, for the best reference, is actual gloves on conductor moving phases around or hot sticking around. So it takes a long time to get 800 hours of hot time. So the idea is when they've achieved that, then they come back and they will challenge our final exam. We put them through some practical challenges, and then once that is all complete, satisfactory, they're now a journey level line worker, and then they go back to work with a totally different status, and now they begin the transition into a trainer. They turn around and start training the next generation. So our apprenticeship model is really focused on, as most of them are, it's training your own replacement. So it's more than just learning how to do the work, it's helping them learn how to be able to teach the work to the next generation. That's the legacy that we've been given, and that's what we continue on with. Safety is more than important to us. You know, there's people that have a value system, and what we teach and train in our apprentices, because it's the value that all of our staff has here, is quite honestly, it boils down to, we're tired of going to funerals. Nobody wants to go to a funeral, nobody wants to visit anybody in a burn unit. And the unfortunate reality is it still is happening in our industry, it's happening in our territory, and that becomes the central theme that we focus on and rally around. So everything we've built, from the moment an apprentice drives down the street and pulls up to our building, is meant to humble them a little bit from the size and the scope of the structure, what the material is made out of. It's designed to put them in that mindset that this is for real. And that's exactly how we teach and train. Even though we may be simulating something, we teach it as if it's the real deal. And every one of our apprentices fully understand that. And if they don't treat it that way, if they don't have the right attitude that way, we'll help correct that and adjust it quite quickly. But in the focus of our safety, talking about values, safety is our value. We don't have competing priorities over safety. Safety is the number, it's not even a number one, it's the number one on a list of one. It's safety. Everybody goes home. Everybody goes home intact, in the same or better shape than they came in, with a little more knowledge and experience. And then all of our competing priorities fall underneath that, whether it's meeting deadlines or quotas, you name it. But the safety focus is huge. We have certain rules, and many people say a lot of the rules for our work are written in blood, and there's literal truth to that. And one of the academic sessions that we teach continually is, what are our work rules? Why do we have these work rules? And when people understand the stories behind why we do something, it tends to help them agree with, okay, we'll do it this way. And again, our work rules may be different from other work rules. Some of the journeymen have looser rules than our apprentices do. So at Mo Valley, our goal is to protect apprentices. Our goal is to protect other workers from our apprentices. So all of our work rules are written in that perspective, in that we don't want to see our apprentices get hurt in a situation, something that's beyond their ability, and we don't want our apprentices to hurt somebody else as a result of a situation that's beyond their ability. They're just learning. So when we put them in the field, anytime they are at any voltage over 600 volts, they have to be at the same height with a journey level line worker, meaning they have to be eye level with them. They may not be in the same bucket, but one may be on a pole, one may be in the bucket. They have to be right next to each other to communicate and really observe what's happening. We've had many cases come up, unfortunately, where people will test that rule. We'll have apprentices or even journey level line workers or foremen on a crew that will think, well, maybe that rule doesn't apply to us. And they'll put apprentices in these situations where they will work by themselves in a primary zone. And the good thing is nothing bad happens, other than the bad thing is that was a cardinal rule that was broken. So when our committee, our board members, when the apprenticeship finds out about those things, if we find out about them, we investigate it fully. And again, our goal is to make sure people understand the rule, why the rule exists, and there's clarity in these are non-negotiable, and then we will go to these folks and find out, is this what happened? Why did it happen? And we will gather information and then take it back to our board, which ultimately will make a decision. And it has happened very recently. We've had apprentices that were very close to topping out that were excused from the program. Their indenture was canceled because, as an example, that was one of the cardinal rules they broke. They chose to go in the air by themselves, 2 apprentices, to work energized primary, and their foreman allowed it. So the 2 apprentices are no longer apprentices, and then the foreman, now we do not have authority over a foreman, a journey level line working in the field, but what we can do is revoke their training privileges. So we have those agreements where if we have a journey level line worker who willfully violates one of our safety rules and puts an apprentice in a hazardous situation or increases their risk willingly, knowingly, especially knowingly, we can come back and through our agreements with our contractors as well as the local unions, we will revoke that person's training privileges, which means basically you can't work with one of our apprentices until you complete this plan that's put in place for you by our board. And sometimes that plan may involve having some remedial training about theory, perhaps grounding, a rubber gloving class, an OSHA 10 class, OSHA 20 class, whatever may happen to be the decision of our board of directors. They will come down and say, look, this person needs to complete these things, and then we will consider putting apprentices back with that individual. So we've gotten to a point in our industry where we have the full backing of both the contractors as well as the NECA employers, obviously the apprenticeship, and then most of the members of our industry are all in agreement with that level of accountability. There's still a few folks that just don't think the rules apply to them, and as those issues come up, we deal with them. But our apprentices, again, we're teaching them to teach the next generation, so we are trying to teach them, in addition to the technical skill, we're giving them the soft skill opportunities to learn how to think through situations, control their emotions, understand what they're being asked to do, and then really have the courage when and where and how to say no. And that's not an easy task, especially when you're a learner for years, and then you get to a certain point where the end is getting closer to your training time, and you know better, and you look around and the folks around you seemingly don't know better or are asking you to violate it. That's when we're asking them to step up as a leader and say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not letting you do that. I'm not going to let another apprentice, a younger apprentice, see me violate that rule, because we're just not going to let it happen. So that's really one of the ways that we focus on safety, again, with our work rules, and then how we teach and train. Everything is focused on ensuring people go home intact. Trying to tie together what's led us up to this point, really it goes back to our committee, our board of directors, if you will. So our committee, which is made up of equal parts of our IBEW union leadership, as well as our NECA, the contractor leadership, they combine forces, and then through the third entity, our training arm as we are, these folks who have all come up in the trade, all come up in their tools, sit down and they look at the industry as a whole, and they say, look, I want to leave this industry better than I found it. So I'm in a position now where I have some authority, I have some ability. What can we do? Where have we been? Where are we now? And where is our industry going? And how do we leave that legacy? How do we pass down what's been given to us? And then how do we leave something for the next generation? So the groups of people on all aspects of this whole organization that are directly or indirectly involved for years, I would say 5, 6, 7 years, have had this dream, this idea of conversations where we need to do something different. So we've recently just transitioned out of the old way of doing things, which was nothing wrong with it, nothing bad about it, to our new manner of training and teaching apprentices. And the environment is critical for that. So in order to transition from what we used to do, where apprentices would go to a satellite remote training facility once every 5, 6 weeks or so, meet with their instructor loosely in a very it's a good, safe environment, but basically when you're trying to run 5 satellite locations, funding is a problem. You can't set up the same 5 things, 5 different places. It's just too expensive, and it's hard to keep things consistent. And then the other problem we have in that type of a format is our apprentices, whether they have storm leave or military duty, they are excused from class. So with the amount of storms that go through our territory, it's not uncommon for apprentices to get off track. When they're supposed to be in class, but they're on a storm, so they don't go to class maybe for 12 weeks or perhaps 18 weeks. And that's a long time to go between classes. So we were losing some of the academic structure as well as some of the alignment of keeping everybody on the same page. So looking ahead many years ago, our leadership basically said, how can we improve that? How can we make that better? So we've transitioned from a monthly program to a week-long program where our apprentices come for a week at a time, and it's scheduled 6 months in advance. And again, other than military duty, which we can schedule in advance, most of the time they know, or a storm, you're going to be in class. There's no question. You're going to be there for the week. The contractors know it. They want it this way. And with that transition, we still had students on monthly program. We had already started our week-long program, and we were starting to build this facility. So our old facility was about maybe 5 minutes away. It was very challenging to plan, build this training center, start decommissioning the 5 other training centers, continuing to teach all of those apprentices out of those training centers, and then start up the month-long program here. And we've just about finished the transition of the line series apprenticeship. We've just started the substation apprenticeship, traffic control, street light, and then the underground apprenticeship as well. So we're kind of bringing everything together to a centralized facility, and really the only way any of that works is how it starts, is having the right people. So with this facility, as awesome and great as it is, it's a result of the combined effort of all the people that put the input into it. So our board of directors, who basically financed everything, they will be the first ones to tell you that they had the dream, they had the idea, and they said, who are our subject matter experts? So they looked at the staff at Missouri Valley and they said, okay, what do you need to make this better than we found it? And they just got out of the way. They just said, tell us what you need. And we all collectively put it together, and just great ideas of great people working together and seeing what other people are doing and saying, what are our needs? This is what we need to build. Not for just now, but we need to build for in the future. And one of the awesome things about our board is every time we go to them with a solution, they come back to us and say, not enough. Think bigger, think long term. You want this, that works today, but what about 6 months, 6 years, 16 years from now? What do we need to do to plan ahead that far? And it's breathtaking to have people that are writing the checks that have that sense of leadership to say, let's do it for the long term. Let's all leave something behind that's going to outlive each one of us. So that really only comes from the people. So we have the right people in the right place at the right time. So what we're building is more than just the building, but it's really the culture, it's the atmosphere of everything, the legacy that we're leaving.